Responsibility. All the events presented in this video are based solely on facts. The purpose of this film is to restore a complete picture of the events taking place and to give a legal assessment of both the events of 1991 to 1993 and the present. The USSR was not destroyed. The seizure of power under the leadership of the CIA is recognized as criminal. Watch the video to the end. The USSR is alive. GKCHP has been restored. Official website governmentussr.su.
Confirms and proclaims on February 12, 1990, in the Kremlin, under the chairman of Mikhail Gorbachev, a meeting of the Presidium of the Supreme Soviet of the USSR was held, whose members, having criminally violated the Constitution, basic law of the great sovereign country, the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, unanimously voted for the establishment of the democratic presidential power. As a result, in March 1990, at the extraordinary Third Congress of People's Deputies of the USSR, the anti-constitutional post of the President of the USSR was established. We hereby confirm that the decision of the Congress of People's Deputies of the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, dated March 14, 1990, number 1361, and Article number 6 on the leading role of the Central Committee of the Communist Party from the Constitution of the USSR by amending and supplementing the Constitution, basic law, of the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics was illegitimate and illegal. Since the Congress of the People's Deputies of the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics first opened on May 25, 1999 year in the city of Moscow, and at that time was the supreme legislative body of the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, but within the framework of the Constitution of the USSR dated October 7, 1977, without the right to make changes and additions to the Constitution of the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics dated October 7, 1977. On December 24, 1990, at the Fourth Congress of People's Deputies of the USSR, it was decided to hold a referendum on the preservation of the USSR. On March 17, 1991, the majority of citizens of the USSR, forming the United, Multinational, Sovereign Soviet People, at the all-union referendum voted for the preservation of the USSR. Out of 185.6 million, 80% of citizens of the USSR with the right to vote, 148.5 million, 79.5%, took part in the referendum. Of this, 130.5 million, 76.43% answering yes spoke in favor of preserving the USSR, including RSFSR, 71.3%, Ukrainian SSR, 70.2%, Belarusian SSR, 82.7%. In the Middle Ages republics, average percentage of who voted for, over 90. The results of the referendum were fully recognized by the world community. In the period from August to December 1991, officials of the USSR, including the highest officials, committed criminal anti-people actions, in contradiction to all Union People's Referendum, dated March 17, 1991. Officials, traitors and betrayers of the motherland didn't take legal measures to preserve the Soviet People's state power of the USSR as the sovereign territorial integrity of the USSR. We remind you that not a single state body of the USSR, including the Supreme State Authority of the USSR, was authorized to make decisions of the liquidation of the USSR or the withdrawal of the republics from the sovereign country, the USSR, as well as other similar decisions. However, on September 6, 1991, the day after the end of the Fifth Extraordinary Congress of People's Deputies of the USSR, decrees of the State Council of the USSR, number GS1, GS2 and GS3 on the recognition of the independence of Latvia, Lithuania and Estonia were signed by the false president of the USSR, Gorbachev MS. This was the beginning of the illegal dismemberment and actual fake collapse of the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics. Soon, on the direct instructions of Gorbachev, diplomatic relations between USSR and the Baltic republics were established, which directly testify to the deliberate criminal nature of the actions of the illegitimate president of the USSR. On December 25, 1991, Gorbachev announced the termination of his activities as illegitimate president of the USSR and signed the decree number UP 3162 on the resignation of the Supreme Commander-in-Chief of the Soviet Armed Forces and transferred control of strategic nuclear weapons not authorized for it by the Constitution and laws of the USSR to the identical illegitimate president of the RSFSR, Yeltsin. Before signing this decree and making an official address on Moscow television, Mikhail Gorbachev in a telephone conversation reported to US President George Bush about his resignation of the duties as the Supreme Commander-in-Chief and transfer of powers on the use of nuclear weapons to the President of RSFSR Yeltsin Boris Nikolaevich. On December 26, 1991, the session of the Upper House of the Supreme Council of the USSR, the Council of the Republics, adopted an illegitimate declaration number 142N on the cessation of the existence of the USSR. These acts by Mikhail Gorbachev are criminal on the basis of C1AR 64 of the CC of the RSFSR, treason to the motherland, i.e., an act deliberately committed by a citizen of the USSR to the detriment of the sovereignty, territorial integrity of the USSR, a conspiracy to seize power. Part 2 of C1 170 of the CC of the RSFSR, abuse of power, i.e., international use of an official of his official position contrary to the interests of the service, if it's committed out of mercenary or other personal interests that cause serious consequences. Art 171 of the CC of the RSFSR, exceeding power, i.e., commissioned by an official of actions that clearly go beyond the limits of the rights and powers granted to him by law, if it causes significant harm to state or public interests. Thus, an organized criminal group of officials of the USSR and the highest officials of the USSR, including the illegitimate president of the USSR, Mikhail Gorbachev, in August-December 1991, deliberately, based on personal interest, committed acts that form the total set of these crimes directed against the foundations of the constitutional system and the state power of the USSR. These monstrous crimes, which had catastrophic consequences for the great, united Soviet people, led to the largest geopolitical catastrophe of the century and therefore cannot have a statute of limitations. Violating the will of the great, united, sovereign Soviet people for preservation of the USSR, manifested at All-Union National Referendum on March 17, 1991, the rights of the sovereign, the legislation of the USSR, and the generally recognized norms of international law, traitors, terrorists, and separatists who seized power as a result of the criminal activities of Mikhail Sergeyevich Gorbachev in the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics of the USSR held an illegitimate parade of sovereignties. Following the adoption of the illegitimate declaration of the state sovereignty of the Russian Soviet Federative Socialist Republic (RSFSR) and the illegal secession of 6 republics from the USSR, March 11, 1990, Lithuanian SSR, May 4, 1990, Latvian SSR, May 8, 1990, Estonian SSR, April 9, 1991, Georgian SSR, August 27, 1991, Moldavian SSR, August 30, 1991, Armenian SSR. Traitors in the leadership of the republics of the sovereign country, the USSR, also adopted illegitimate declarations and signed illegal documents on secession from the USSR. In violation of the Constitution of the USSR of 1977, as the procedures for secession of the Union Republics for the USSR under the law of the USSR, dated on the 3rd of April 1990, number 1409 the 1st. In April 1991, at the residence of Mikhail Gorbachev in Novo-Ogaryovo, between the Union Republics, RSFSR, Ukrainian SSR, Belarusian SSR, Azerbaijan SSR, Uzbek SSR, Kazakh SSR, Tajik SSR, Turkmen SSR, Kyrgyz SSR. A criminal process was initiated to form a new union treaty in the form of the Union Sovereign States, USS Federation. On December the 8th, having once again committed a crime, violating the Constitution of the USSR of 1977, as the procedures of withdrawing under the law of the USSR, dated the 3rd of April 1990, number 1401 the first, without having any legal authority for this from the great, united, sovereign Soviet people as a sovereign power in the USSR, and from the authorities of the USSR, as the Union Republics, as international subjects of the law of the sovereign country of the USSR, criminally violating the will of great, united, sovereign Soviet people, manifested and approved at the referendum on March 17, 1991, violating the right of the sovereign, the legislation of the USSR, and the norms of international law, violating the Charter, principles, and goals of the United Nations. The heads of the RSFSR, the Ukrainian SSR and the Belarusian SSR, and Belovezhskaya Puchina, without the approval of the great, unified sovereign Soviet people, as the leadership of the other Union Republics of the USSR, signed the Voit-Belovezhskaya Agreement of the creation of the Commonwealth of Independent States, CIS, thereby false presidents from the BSSR Shushkevich, from the RSFSR Yeltsin, and the Ukrainian SSR Kravchuk, committed actions containing signs of a serious crime under Art 61st of the Criminal Code of the BSSR, Art 64th of the Criminal Code of the RSFSR, Art 56 of the Criminal Code of the Ukrainian SSR, which consists in treason to the motherland by preparing and organizing conspiracy to unconstitutionally seize the state power of the Union Republics of the USSR, abolish the Union institutions of power that were then in force, unlawfully change the constitutional status of the BSSR, the RSFSR, and the Ukrainian SSR. According to the Constitution of the USSR of 1977, in the event of a discrepancy between the law of the Union Republic and the all-Union law, the basic law of the great sovereign country of the Union Soviet Socialist Republics shall apply, under the jurisdiction of the state of the USSR, represented by its highest bodies of the state power and the administration, according to the Article 73rd of the Constitution of the USSR of 1977, we are subject to determination of the state border of the USSR and approval of changes in the borders between the international subjects of law, the Union Republics, ensuring the unity of legislative regulations throughout the sovereign territory of the USSR, establishing the foundations of the legislation of the USSR as the Union Republics. This means that breaking of the Union Treaty is under the jurisdiction of the all-Union state authorities of the great sovereign country, the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, and its great, united, sovereign Soviet people, and not representatives of individual Union Republics. Thus, in 1991, foreign invaders in a criminal conspiracy with a nation of separatists, traitors to the great, united, sovereign Soviet people in the leadership of the republics of the USSR, carried out a criminal coup d'etat as a result of the monstrous criminal actions of the foreign terrorists, traitors and betrayers of the motherland. The united great sovereign country, the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, was forcibly and criminally divided into 15 parts, and the great, united, multinational, sovereign Soviet people throughout the sovereign territory of the USSR was criminally captured and humiliated by terrorists and invaders with bloody violence and substitution of concepts, deceit and lies, and also forcibly driven into the occupation regime. On June 17, 1982, US President Ronald Reagan, in his criminal and deceitful speech at the UN General Assembly, called the USSR the empire of evil and the center of evil. Exactly 10 years later, on June 17, 1992, a traitor to his great motherland and fake president of the Russian Federation, Yeltsin Boris Nikolaevich, spoke in the American Congress, who announced his victory over the idol of communism and asked the Lord to bless America, betrayed our great motherland, thereby sworn in by the United States.
Господи, благослови Америку.
Sovereignties of the international legal statute of each federal republic and autonomy of the USSR arise, exist and are regulated by the USSR Law No. 1417-1 on the general principles of local self-government, and local economy in the USSR, having in the USSR state registration number C1 9930-177, dated the 4th of April 1990, and C1 9930-199, dated on the 9th of April 1990, respectively. According to the law of the sovereign legislation of the USSR and international law recognizing the operation of the national legislation of the Union Republics during criminal, violent liquidation of the supreme authorities of the great sovereign country, the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, the Constitution of the USSR of 1977 as a procedure for the exit of the international subjects of law, the Union Republics under the law of the USSR, dated the 3rd of April 1990, number 1409 the 1st. At present, legally and in fact the great sovereign country, the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, exists and is an inactive subject of international law. All buildings, structures, property, assets located in the USSR and outside it legally continue to be in the possession of the great sovereign country, the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics. Not a single centimeter of land, not a single building, structure, communications were legitimately transferred from the sovereign jurisdiction of the USSR to the jurisdiction of the newly formed private, commercial, separatist, predatory structures organized by criminal communities of the occupation regime of criminal transnational corporations. Also, banking assets, security, historical and cultural values, all other assets placed and located outside the sovereign territory of the USSR were not distributed. Great sovereign country, Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, and its great sovereign Soviet people retained its sovereign rights to all property of the USSR throughout the sovereign territory of the USSR and in the whole world.